Welcome to Stu and the Nunn, an online radio show and podcast focused on national security, policy, politics, and selfless service. We're here to give you an honest opinion, a different perspective, and hopefully a few laughs. We do this by not only interviewing guests, but also sharing our own perspectives and asking you, the listener, to interact with us on the show chat room, via our Facebook page, and on Twitter. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stu and the Nunn. It is May 9th, and you can see you got Nunn here to my side. We're glad and thankful that you are joining us tonight on this Thursday night. And it's just us tonight. We had Gina last week. How do you outdo that? I mean, we got to give ourselves a little space. You can't improve on perfection there. So thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about a number of topics tonight, but first and foremost, before Toby talks about our sponsor, I want to welcome my good brother from another mother and southern studio, Toby Nunn.
Always a pleasure to be joining my main man, my brother from another motherland, Troy Boohammer, on this fine Thursday evening. We are still enjoying a little bit of inclement weather here, so apologies if we have some technical difficulties. But life is good, and we'd like to thank Enlisted 9 Fight Company. E9, always representing. Tonight, Troy is wearing the multicam hat that you can find at.
It's a rare one. This may be priceless.
That actually is a rare one. I was just about to say where you can find that, and then I was like, no, you can't find it there.
This may be one of only a handful.
Yeah. So, disregard that, all you haters and all those lovers of E9. You actually got to know somebody. But you can find Enlisted 9 at 9lineapparel.com. Click on the E9 link, and you will find the entire E9 collection, which has great hits like Kavanaugh's, he still likes beer, and America Likes to Party, and the Mother of All Bombs. You can find that there, as well as some of the, as well as the new, Wonder Bread Takeoff with the, 300 Win Mag.
That's right.
So, so you can find all those great classics and new designs from Enlisted 9 at 9lineapparel.com. Hit it. Get you some. But welcome to the show.
That's right. Welcome, everyone. And, Toby, we have to ask Colton what he thinks the value of this hat is. I mean, this could be
eBay.
Not that I want to get rid of it, but we could put it up for auction. It is priceless. It is not. I don't wear it a lot because I know it's it's multicam, flex fit in the back. There's no hole in the back. Fits nice and tight. It's got the logo, and goes well with my shirt that I wear in honor of you. Right.
The Gonzalez battle flag.
That's right. It's for you and Doug. Right. Doug's tuned in, so I'm definitely wearing it for my man Doug too. And
isn't it his birthday or something?
It was a couple days ago. So
happy birthday, Shard.
Happy birthday, Shard. And in your honor, I'm drinking a little tea tonight. Oh, not just any tea, because you may be thinking, Troy, you're drinking tea? No, this is Crown Royal peach tea. Very hard to find Crown Royal peach. It's super hard to find. It is staying shopped out on the shelves. You mix about an ounce or so of that, ounce and a half of that with some homemade iced tea, and you got some Crown Royal peach tea. Drinking this in honor of you, Doug, for your birthday.
Well,
there we go. What are you drinking?
Topo Chico.
Oh, it's that Mexican water, Texas water stuff or whatever, isn't it? What is that?
Yeah, but I have it.
Everyone down there drinks it. I don't know what it is.
But I have it mixed with some deliciousness, so it's all good. I actually have it mixed with a little Treaty Oak Waterloo 9 gin, which is made right here in the ATX.
Little Matt Burton juice there. Little.
Well,
gin.
He's a
gin guy.
I miss my boy.
Yeah,
I miss my boy.
I think gin is. I think gin's trash water. I'm more of a vodka guy, but he is partial to his gin, and
he likes the gimlets.
Yes. I like the vodka gimlets, but yes, not too many of them though. Drink too many of those when you're in Vegas. you feel it the next day. It's
Yeah, yeah.
harsh.
I've bore witness.
Yes.
Or wit.
And about 11 o'clock the next morning after hitting that breakfast buffet, you're like, oh, yeah, that gimlet's right. I can
Yeah.
feel it. That heartburn's coming back. Yeah. Um, but anyways, hey, Toby, you're looking sharp tonight, man. Not only with your VO shirt on, but the hair. You kind of got that Sopranos, like, Southern style look going on. You got it kind of slicked back.
Well,
I miss my bald brother, but you're sporting it well. You're doing well with it.
like I'm not as angry at my head as I used to be. So I'm, letting it grow. In the words of the contemporary American play Frozen by Walt Disney. I'm just letting it grow.
Yeah.
Just let it go, let it grow. And
Not that I'm jealous,
what's up.
but I could be. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no.
I don't think I
The
could support that without some Joe Biden plugs. I don't think I could get that look back.
it's a classic. I'm just trying to keep, the hair out of my eyes, man.
Yeah,
The
the struggle is real. There we go. But
it is for real. So let's jump into it.
Yeah,
Let's jump into it.
it has been another interesting week. As always, it is there's no shortage of stuff to talk about, and like usual, most of it happens within 48 hours of this show, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to kind of jump into something before we get into politics now, because everybody knows we're probably going to hit on that. So I want to talk about this other terrible shooting that happened out in Colorado just the other day. I've been kind of loosely following it. I haven't, I know it's an 18-year-old male and an underage female, probably a girlfriend or something, but I don't know, went into a school not far from Columbine, and went into the STEM school, pulled out some guns, at least a couple pistols that I heard, and started shooting at students. Killed one, and wounded seven, from what I understand. And again, we have a shooting that just happened not too long before that. We have a student that gave their life trying to fight back. Young man who tried to tackle and take him out. Who the true act of bravery, and an example of bravery, courage, selfless service, all wrapped in one, in probably a young 19-year-old young man. Who hasn't really gotten an experienced life yet, who threw all that to the side, who had more care and self-interest, more care and interest in his fellow students than the whole bunch of life in front of him. 60, 70, 80 years probably in front of him, and took it out and lost his life as these couple of idiots tried to shoot the place up, wounded some people. Still don't know. I don't know if you know, Toby. I don't know the motivation or everything behind it, but. If you do, I want you to definitely jump in. But a couple of things I want to highlight. One is this young man, this hero that stood out and did his best and is credited with saving life. Not much difference than the shooting that happened just a few days before, where a young Marine recruit who had signed up for the Marines did the same thing, right? Who threw it all aside. Didn't have to go through basic and AIT and be instilled morals or the code of conduct and the values and beliefs, but he was raised right. He knew right from wrong, and with no thought to himself. It'd be easy to turn and run. We have this most people in our DNA, we have this sense of survival and do what you can to protect. But just totally impressed, dude, to see these couple young men with very little time on this planet and a lot of time that was potentially in front of them, just throw it all away and do the right thing without a thought. When we see like the cop in Parkland shooting who stood outside, and other people that won't step up and watch something happen in front of them. Very, very impressive. I mean, just in awe.
So a couple of layers here that I'd love to unpack real fast. And layer number one is this: we've been fighting as a nation a culture of victimhood. This, let's promote, let's celebritize, being victimized, and not celebrating and throwing honor at people who deserve it. And the reason why I'm phrasing it this way is because the mainstream media, for the most part, have put a lot of attention into the evildoer and not any attention into the heroics and the honor that have been put to fight against that. And here we have, in a very quick turnaround of time, two events where people went in to victimize other people. And I got to be honest with you, I don't know either one of these shooters' names or the underage girl's name. And I think that's a direct reflection of the paradigm shift of how we are fighting as a culture this victimization, this victimhood.
Mm-hmm.
This young man that is going in the Marine Corps answered the call by raising his hand and signing his name. Opportunity presented itself, and his moral compass dictated that he do something because he is not one to stand up against oppression. This other young man, like where they use the words like the only victim, it's like, no, that dude's not a victim. That dude's a hero because he sought mutual combat with his oppressor. He did not go quietly into the night. He did not stand on the Dover cliffs, feel the wind against his face and cheeks, and be like, "Nah, I'm gonna hide today, and hopefully, one of my classmates will be a human shield for me." That's not what either one of these fine Americans did. They both answered the call in that moment, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is what makes our culture better than a lot of other places in the world. Now, this is not a nationalistic statement. This is not Toby getting on some supremacy thing. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is we believe in the betterment of all humanity in America. This is what separates us. This is what makes us the shining city on the hill, where someone, regardless of station, looks at the potential outcome of an event and says, I have the ability to change this. I have the ability to make this different. And that's the American dream. That is what makes America great. And I'm not saying that to politicize a candidate. I'm not saying that to politicize an administration. I'm saying that is the dynamic, and that is the paradigm shift that we are experiencing in our culture today. Because 2 years ago, everyone would have known these shooters' names. Everyone would have known everything there is to know about them. And you would have known nothing about the truth of the scenario.
Right. Instead, we know names like, Kendrick Castillo, who was the young man in Colorado,
yes.
Right?
Say his name. Say his name.
Yeah. Kendrick Castillo, 18 years old.
Say his name.
Right?
Yeah.
Was in the robotics club. Wasn't in ROTC. Wasn't in football. Was in the robotics club in a STEM school. Nothing. You can't judge the book by its cover. You couldn't look at him and say, "Oh, he looks like this. There's no way he'd be that," or whatever. In the time it mattered, in the moment, in the seconds when it mattered, he made the difference. He separated himself from 99.9999% of this world, much less this country, in taking that action. Not that everyone else is a coward, but until you've faced that kind of hell and gunfire and all that stuff, nobody that hasn't faced it, and that's including those that have been in combat. There's been a lot of people in combat, but they have not even faced that kind of direct threat. Nobody is going to know what decision they're going to make. I can tell you right there, no one makes that decision. No one has a fleeting thought about, oh, I may get a book deal out of this. Oh, they're going to name the school after me. Oh, they're going to. There's nothing superficial, anything like that arose with their mind. So nothing, I guarantee you, went through like that in Kendrick's mind, or Riley Howell at Charlotte, University of North Carolina, Charlotte. He was a couple years older.
Amen.
But he was signed up for the Marine Corps, and they're going to give him full burial honors, full military honors, as they should. No problem with that.
He earned them.
Yes.
He earned them. So let's. I kind of want to unpack, because I think that's another layer of what you said. So, okay, we are identifying the true significance of the event. There are guys, and I'm going to say one of them's name because I just think he's a little punk, and that's David Hogg. All right. And the reason why I think he's a little punk is like he doesn't care about the gun issue. Like a school shooting is the best thing that ever happened to that kid. So like if he tells you that he actually cares about gun violence, you know he's full of shit. Right? That's why he's a punk. He's exploiting the grief, he's exploiting the endangerment of other people, the victimization of other people, and he's exploiting it for his own, like, I got to get this college, I got to get this book, I got to get this interview, I got to build my political name, I got to build some cred.
And not because, real quick, not because he was a survivor, because he happened to be attending the same school as
in
shooting
the general
happened.
vicinity. In the general vicinity.
If on campus does not make you a survivor.
So
Survivor
like,
were the ones ducking into the classrooms, like as
right.
bullets
So like,
by.
Misappropriating that moniker, misappropriating that title, misappropriating that moment. Now look at the shift between and now. And people are like, well, we need to listen to children. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's, leading the charge at lowering the voting age. They think that that's going to help them get votes. And yeah, it probably will, because everyone knows the education system's dominated by very liberal and democratic people, which there's nothing wrong with that at all. There's nothing wrong with that. What we are seeing, though, is like today, and I want to give a hat tip to, multiple show guest, Doc Simpson. Mike, like, pointed out and demonstrated beautifully earlier, how the kids at the memorial service and the grief assembly realized that media were there, and that media were filming them, and media were looking for that opportunity to promote this culture of victimization, this victimhood. And the kids were like, wait a second, time out, we out. Like, you're not going to use us for your agenda. You are not going to take this moment to empower an agenda not accurate, that is not correct, and that is wrong. And that, I think, speaks so loudly. And in Colorado, let's not pull any punches here. Colorado is a little liberal. And when you look at the paradigm shift, and when you look at the cultural understanding and the significance of this moment, where the kids who are smart enough, and like, kids are smart, they're naive and they lack experience, but let's not discredit their intelligence level. Like, have you never watched Doogie Howser? I mean, it's not a real guy, but I'm kidding. No, kids are intelligent. Kids are great. And they understand. They can see, like, they're being exploited. They can see the difference between this and that. Now, I'm going to get a bunch of hate mail because people are like, oh, well, Parkland, there was double digits murdered. Like, yeah. Well, that's because, like, we had people that were afraid to do their jobs. We had people that didn't answer the call. We lacked heroes.
Right.
We lack heroes because we don't promote heroism. We don't celebritize. We don't glorify people doing good things. We don't lift up people that face evil. That's one of the beautiful things about what Clint Eastwood did with the movie, where he took the actual guys that charged the terrorists on the train to Paris and gave them the platform and said, hey, look, heroes exist today. Real men, not actors. These guys then came on with AK-47s, pulled it back, and went to go to town, and guys prayed for the opportunity to choke a fool out.
And great movie. Great movie using... they could have picked, beautiful, shaped, sculpted actors and this and that. Whatever. Use the real dudes. Right.
They use the real dudes.
Yep.
And like I'm not saying this because I'm a member of this club. I'm saying this because we forgot that guys like Audie Murphy lived. We forgot about the chesty pullers.
Right.
We have forgotten about real
We
heroes.
don't well, we
Now,
don't glorify them, right? They're not
yeah,
the stars of the movies anymore. That's not what sells tickets because that's where
yeah,
society has went, right?
yeah, and
Um,
like
instead, people that get that stand up for you know that stand up and I don't know buck the system and get a gender change or do this or do that are lauded as heroes and that kind of stuff, right? Or like you mentioned, Hogg, who stands up and gets in front of every camera that he can get to. And raises his fist up is lauded as a hero because it looks like he stands up against a man. And
no, like that's a so you brought up
that's what I
something
do,
that
man.
like
We're like at the net, and I just serve them up, dude, and you just
yeah, no,
windmill
and
them
I'm,
over
I'm
the
about
top.
to I'm about to like give it the Eli and like smack this thing down in the front line. The no, Manning is a perfect example. They promoted Manning like a celebrity. Manning has a blue check mark next to its name, and you're like, why does someone have a verified Twitter account? Why does someone have a verified, like celebrity public persona account that is a traitor to the country?
Right, convicted.
Like the convicted traitor that was not pardoned.
Right.
Like, and then people are like, oh, this poor, girl, this poor thing. It's like, okay, one, no, like I don't care what your sexual orientation is. I don't care what process of like, genitalia you're in. That's irrelevant. You're a convicted, treasonous criminal to the nation of the United States.
It'd be like if Hassan decided Leavenworth to go get a sex change. Would he all of a sudden become a hero because he got a sex change, even though he murdered a ton of people at Fort Hood? You know, just because you do something like that doesn't make you. I
Right.
mean, um,
I'll like I'll pose the argument that more people died as a result of Manning's efforts
people will never know about. People will never
than
know about.
Hassan's.
Yeah.
Like I'll boldly pose that
They may not, and they were
hypothesis.
probably not American citizens, or if they were, like say, you'll never know their names. We'll never know about
Like
that.
I bet American citizens died as a result of the what Manning did, and I guarantee like a boatload of non-citizens died as a result of what Manning did.
Right. Well,
Just like
same
just
thing.
like Bo
You got me there, Bo Bergdahl, right? Up, very familiar, very tied into that personally. Yeah, there were a number of soldiers of many nationalities, but I'll just say, and I didn't count on the countless Afghan soldiers that were killed because of him, but the American soldiers that were killed, maimed, and wounded, some for the rest of their life, in because of him walking off his base and being a coward, deserter, and and here he was, projected like he was just again a hero, right? Parents brought to the White House.
No, and here's the sad part, right? Is we are afraid to speak up about this moment. We are afraid to speak up, and that's what I think the significance of these young men and women walking out of that thing today demonstrates. A few years ago, if you would have said that Michael Brown was a criminal that got caught in the act of strong arm robbery and assault on a police officer, you were a racist. Like, period.
Right.
Like, how dare you say that about this guy? Like, how dare you like Trayvon Martin? How dare you? Like, we celebritize and we honor the wrong people. We should not be like, there's nothing wrong with supporting someone and lifting someone up that believes in law and order.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with lifting up and supporting someone that looks to their left and their right and says, I want to do better for my neighborhood. But that's not who we lift up.
No.
We have this weird culture of victimization on that's like, and people are talking about toxic masculinity. They should be talking about that. They should be talking about like toxic pussification of America.
And that's toxic. And that's toxic. And some of this has to do with something we've talked about a number of times, man, and that is, are you what people consider against the president or in the president's side, right? We've talked about that a number of times. People have went both really quickly, depending on what they say, and depending on what camp you're the media and whoever deems you what side you're in, you're either their darling or you're their arch enemy. And you can pick Comey to be one of those. He went from both sides, and you can pick a number of other people. Julian Assange, another one, right? Julian Assange was a traitor and an enemy of the people, and then went to become this great voice with WikiLeaks and exposing, because it was during the years of the war going on. It's like, hey, let's expose the military for all the bad stuff and he's helping it. Look, he's the champion voice of the people. Nobody cared about being accused of rape and all that stuff. It was, he was tied to Manning, and he was this great person. And now, then it became, they thought he was part of the Russian collusion, and now everyone was after him again. Everyone, being those that don't like the president, were, hey, he was helping the president. There's this big thought that somehow he was the one feeding and hacking DNC servers, and he's in the president's camp, and we hate him again. So it depends on if the person is the champion of the left, the media, the press, whatever. For a lot of people, it depends on if they are against whatever the president's for. It's boiled down, or it's still at that level, which I think is.
Well, sad. I mean, I think it goes deeper than that, and I think it's like flexible standards. And the reason why I bring up flexible standards is I'm going to take someone outside of the political scheme of, the past couple administrations, but I'm going to bring up Roman Polanski. Like, here's a guy that fled the United States, because he openly and knowingly sexually violated underage people, and fled prosecution here in the United States. Now, he's made some movies, right? He's made some movies. I don't think I'm enough of a movie expert or cinematographer, whatever that word is. Camera guy to be like, that's awesome. I know what I like. I know what I don't like. I can see that he has a vision, an artistic vision, and creative ability when he does it. And, and I appreciate that as a talent. I appreciate that as a profession. But here's the thing is you're a child rapist. So when I watch your movies, I'm going to know that you're a child rapist.
Yeah.
And that should not, because you make a good movie, shouldn't excuse the fact that you're a child rapist. If you're an amazing running back that can take the ball, from one man that hands it to you, and you have strong enough legs because you don't skip leg day, right, Boomtown?
That's right. I love leg day like I love my wife.
You go through that line and you get going, and everyone's like, oh, that's awesome. He gets, 10 yards after contact. That's a, great, average. And then he I don't know, hypothetically says, horrible things about women, and, maybe knocks one out in an elevator on a security camera. Yeah. You're a piece of shit, dude.
Right.
I think, as a culture, we have these flexible standards. You're like, oh, well, that guy, he beats his wife. This guy rapes kids.
We can remove people. This guy abuses dogs and fights them and abuses and terrorizes dogs, and then all of a sudden bounces back. Well, he's a good quarterback. So
yeah, or this guy has small kids living in his cool little fantastical mansion in California in sleepovers, but no, he's made billions of money off of music, so it's cool. No, you can't have these flexible standards.
Yeah.
Like I remember something, like my dad told me and taught me as a very young boy. And it's like, you know, you can work hard, you can do great things. You tell a lie, and the reason he was telling me this lesson is because I lied. I was dishonest,
Right.
and I did more than misrepresent the truth. I told falsehoods. My dad's like, here's the deal, dude. It doesn't matter like how good a kid you are. It doesn't matter how well you mow the lawn or how well the paper gets delivered or like how nice you treat your dog. You're a liar.
Dude, I've said it to more soldiers and more employees and my kids. I literally, there's no way I could count. It's got to be in the four digits, thousands of times. You can do 1,000 things right. All it takes is one thing wrong, and everyone forgets all the right stuff. And it applies all the time and applies to everything. You could do everything right, and it definitely applies in the military, but it could apply to anything. You apply in your workplace. You could be the most awesome one. You could do this and do whatever. Screw up, and cost the company money, reputation, something like that. You could. They don't care about any of this stuff. They don't care what your awards look like on the wall. It takes one thing to do wrong. You always. That's what we call it, the hard right versus easy wrong. You got to stay on point. You got to make sure that you don't slip up. You got to make sure that you don't make an unethical decision or a bad decision, because you could have done everything right for years. One thing wrong, it's gone, right? Um,
Yeah,
and if you ignore
but we
that
can't
wrong
have these
thing,
flexible standards.
yeah, if you ignore that wrong thing because you like someone's albums or what position they play or the team they're on or whatever, or their job as maybe a clergyman or whatever it may be, then you're as guilty and as wrong as part of the violation as they are for doing it, because you're not
Yeah. So
holding them to
let,
standard.
let's
I know
so
I'm
let
throwing a lot up there. I know.
no no. So let's go at some other things that happened this week. Let's look at some
Yeah.
political stuff real fast.
Yeah, let's do that real
So
quick. Before we do, real quick, I want to mention those kids that walked out. Not only did they walk out when the media was there, they walked out also because one running for president, two politicians got there and started talking about the shooting that was less than 24 hours old, and they were using it for talking gun control. And the kids also, a lot of kids walked out for that. They came back later when they got in front of the mic and said, "We're not going to use our grief for gun control."
right, exactly.
Again, kids
The
standing up for what's right.
Yeah, no, and I love that. Like
But let's
I,
get into
I love it.
politics for sure.
I
Go ahead.
loved I love the naivety, and I mean that in a good way of some of what happened at Parkland. Like man, when I was that age, I wanted, dude, I like peace, love, and everything. Like I wanted that. I didn't have that hardened view of the world. I hadn't met true evil yet.
Right.
I didn't know what that is. I long and I wish that on my kids, like I I don't want my kids to ever know. I know you've sent a son to war, and like I remember like one of the most impressive pieces of writing you ever did was that Boo Hammer piece where you talked about seeing your son off to Afghanistan after you just got back. And like, dude, some of the most powerful, some of the best writing. And to all our listeners and or viewers or however you're like checking us out tonight, you need to go read that piece that Troy wrote about that. It's one of the most powerful emotional pieces. But like, I love the naivety. I wish the innocence of our children is maintained. I'm glad that we live in a world, meaning the Western culture, that we can shelter our kids from stuff. Like when some of the millennials come out with this cute utopian things, I want to pinch their cheeks, and I love them because like they don't know what
Yeah.
hardship is. They don't know what evil is. They don't know what happened in Srebrenica. They don't know what happened on the back alleys outside Haifa Street or Dawasa Street in Mosul, Iraq, where people were butchering people, like, and the blood flowed into the streets, like their own people doing it to each other.
They don't, they
Like they
don't
don't.
they don't know about a father throwing boiling water on his daughter, knowing it would distract the American soldiers from searching his house because we would respond to a young girl burned with boiling
Yeah.
water, right?
Like
They don't see their father throw that on their sister or sibling. Yeah, they shield
like
it. Must be nice,
and
right?
and I love that.
Yeah.
I love that we live in a place that we can say and believe, about, like people talking about like the universal wage, the living wage. And it's like, man, how cool is it that you live in a country that you think that's a legitimate thing? Like, I love that. I love the fact that my kids are lucky and blessed enough to live in a country on a continent that is as righteous and as good as this. I
Yeah.
love that aspect. But also, it's like, hey, dudes, like, evil's out there. Like, Satan's a real thing.
That's right.
And like, and and he don't take Sundays off. Like, in fact, that's probably when he acts up the
Yeah.
most.
And he's
But
always trying to dull your senses. He's always
yeah,
trying to lead you into something that you never see it coming.
but like when we have these kids do this stuff, like it makes me proud to see it. It makes me proud to know that the paradigm is changing, the dynamic is shifting, and we are identifying that we need to rise up, we need to be stronger, and we need to support the good things. There's nothing wrong with, and I've seen it here recently, in the way that our first responders here, and of course I live in Texas, which is a very, like, conservative is not the word, because it's not
Not where you
the
live.
difference between liberal. It's not the difference between liberalism and conservatism. It's like, it's a respect for people.
Yeah.
Like, and that you find that in all parties, you find that in all political beliefs and structures. Like, I
That
live in a
Prius
place where
that
people,
Prius will pull over on the shoulder and let you pass as much as that pickup truck will. Right?
absolutely, absolutely, and that's, I'm very fortunate, and that's why I live here. Because, like, I love how people treat people here,
Right.
regardless of political views, regardless, like, what sticker you got in your window. And, like, I think it's awesome that that is becoming more prevalent than this divisive. Someone said something to me the other day. They're like, man, I feel like, Trump's just divided us so much. And I'm like, you know what? I disagree.
Yeah,
And
that's what the talking heads want you to think, because
right,
it sells airtime.
like, I disagree. And I challenge you to really think about where you're at today, how you feel about different things, and how defensive you are about certain things, and not because of division, but because of love, because you care about people, because you care about people's outcomes. And I think, like, that's really awesome. I love how these kids are doing what they're doing. I love the change in it.
But I got a
And
thought. I
then
got a thought on it real
we
quick,
look at
Toby.
we look at we look at how the adults are behaving,
You're right.
and we look at the political side of it, and it's like, oh, in America, it's all about this party line. It's like, man, like, you
But like I
you
do,
got
you
you got
you
to do better.
travel enough, and especially in what they would refer to as the flyover states. I mean, you live in one essentially. That I mean, when you talk to everyday people, you take a lot of people out on VO trips. You interact with a lot of folks in a lot of the industry, outdoor industry, the VO stuff, and they're not all red hat wearing, Republican thumping kind of folks. I know for a
No,
fact, because this country's
absolutely
made
not.
up of a cross pollination of all kind of folks, and
Absolutely not. Yeah.
right, and I think, when we see these kids do these things, okay, and Sally, I'm guilty of this too. We're looking at it going, wow, isn't this awesome? Like the youth, there's hope yet, blah blah blah. That's because we see what is put in front of us all the time, which is the hogs and the whatever that are put up there, and you hear all these stories of kids doing terrible things, and you're given this image, and you kind of go, man, where's this country going? Look at the youth. But then I think, you know what, my parents and grandparents are probably saying the same damn thing about me, and I'm sure many generations before were the same way. When those parents saw Elvis shaking his hips, they were like, they thought the country's going to hell in a handbasket, right? And so every generation has done that. But we don't hear enough of the good stuff because it doesn't sell. It's not put in front of us. But I've got to think, it's kind of like, you know, when we were overseas, when I was in Afghanistan, you were in Iraq, and when news would come back and the people back here would hear about it, you're going, that's only 2%. Like there's 98% more stuff happening you never even know about. I think it's the same thing with this. We hear about these couple of kids because it was a big shooting and this and that. But how many other big ones, maybe, how many other kids see something and go to the principal and say, I saw Bobby or Susie with a gun, and it stops and you never hear about it? Or I got a threat and it stops and never hear. How many, I got to imagine that what little bit we see is a tip of the iceberg behind a whole bunch of good
It's
youth, not just kids, 20s and the 30s, all the way up, that are probably doing just as, percentage wise, on is probably doing just as many good things out there. We just don't see it.
no, no. I'll tell you straight up. In my school district, in my daughter's high school, recently, within the last year, in fact, this school year that's about to end, there was credible threat from multiple students. It got posted to social media, and within minutes of it being put on social media, kids that had witnessed it on social media alerted authorities, and they were able to thwart a potential dangerous attack, apprehend, and help the children that put the threat out there. Because in a lot of cases, you know, like we're talking about a mental health issue, and it requires help.
Right.
And instead of like this kid getting put out in a blaze of glory, because that's actually what's going to happen in Texas if you want to engage in that, you know, like this child continues to live, and is going to have a good future because, you know, it was helped at that moment. But people will never talk about that.
No.
Like that was, even here, that was a tiny, even on local news, tiny blip. But I want to go back to flexible standards real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I want to go back to flexible standards is because we have things on both sides of the fence where people they want you. We have a guy running for president right now on one side that's a known wife beater. We have a guy that's known.
Luckily, there's 21. There's like 20 others to pick from on that side, I think.
Right, but like
got options.
The fact that this guy's even running for president just shows like the cultural idea that like, hey, I'm good at this part of my job, but I'm a shitbag at the house. Like we had a saying in the Army, and I know you know where I'm going with this, about being a good field soldier or a good garrison soldier. And I remember I had a wonderful leader. A guy by the name of Captain Corpening. He was my company commander. He was a beautiful man in terms of his personality. I learned a lot about his leadership. And I remember telling him one day, you know, I was just a young private, actually. I think I might have been a PFC at the time. And he was like, you know, Private Nunn, you know, what do you aspire to be? And, you know, and I said, well, because he made the comment that I was an amazing field soldier. Mm. And I'm like, I'm really trying to get my garrison soldiering better. And like, he was like, you know, Private Nunn, what you really need to do is get your soldiering better. Like, there's no such thing as a good field soldier. There's no such thing as a good garrison soldier. If you want to be a good soldier, you got to be good at everything.
Yep.
And you got to, like, you can't be, I'm great at this, but I'm a shitbag at that. Like, you can be an amazing field soldier and a crappy garrison soldier. You're not a soldier. Like, you can't use that term.
Right.
You gotta do that. And like, when I look at this stuff politically, you know, it kind of makes me chuckle a little bit, because people are like, oh, well, you know, look, this guy was a great president. Or he spied on his opponent, or he promoted his administration to go after people through the intelligence, or he utilized false intelligence to like smear somebody, or people used you know against themselves. Um, like, dude, like that's not good.
Right.
Like you're not a good leader if you do that. You're not. How can you call yourself like? Well, he was a great director of this agency. No, he used it illegally against someone that he felt politically opposed to. That doesn't make you great. That actually
Right.
makes you shitty at your job.
Right.
you know, like,
It'd be no different than someone in the company, someone in your organization, right? Like, wow, he got promoted so fast, and yeah, but he threw people under the bus, and he lied to people, and he used people like steps, rungs on the ladder. So yeah, he got up to be a director, VP really fast. That doesn't make him a good leader when he did it unethically to get there. When he lost trust, when he was dishonest, that doesn't make it. Just means the guy got promoted quick. Doesn't mean anything if he didn't really get it on his own merit and values, right? Same thing for sure.
yeah.
But since we're talking about leader, I want to transition a little bit. If that's okay, as we
Send,
want to. Yeah. So speaking of leaders, Lieutenant Michael Bahena. Um, long before this show, for those that are just been tuned in and gotten to know Toby and I since we've been doing Stu and the Nun for the last 165 episodes, a couple years now. We used to do a show a long time ago called "You Served," and Toby. That's how Toby and I've been on it many times, and I had other co-hosts on there and stuff. And we started talking about this case way back when, like I'm talking 10 years, 12 years ago, and it is
in a minute.
Michael Bahena served his time, got out a little bit early for good behavior, and thankfully this week, because the governor of Oklahoma, got the president's attention about it, he was given full pardon. Um, and it is one of those cases, and if you don't know the story, I encourage you to just Google Michael Bahena and read the story. Wrongfully imprisoned. We talked about First Sergeant Hatley, right? Hatley, did I say it right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
we talked about his
Absolutely.
case last week,
Free
and yeah,
freerangerhatley.com.
we've talked about his case last week a number of times on here, and it's much like that where he was kind of set up by a crappy soldier who had drug charges, and CID used that, and and we also talked about that recently, I think last week, about how the Uniform Code of Military Justice is not does not apply like innocent to proven guilty like the rest of the U.S. court system does. It is guilty until you prove yourself innocent. We talked about that. Well, Michael Bahena's case was much the same way. He was in He was in Iraq, and one of the worst. That time period was really bad. Lots of action, lots of soldiers dying, many more getting wounded. And they captured a guy. I'll summarize it for quick. Captured a guy who they knew information about, and he did a field questioning, which is totally allowable and legal. He field questioned the soldier, or the soldier. I'm sorry, the enemy. When he did, when he was talking to him on the side of a road, the guy broke loose or whatever, and started to attack him, and he had to defend himself, and he shot and killed him. So they put him up on charges like he murdered the guy in cold blood. He has been pardoned, and it's I think it's an inspiration, Toby, to Ranger Hatley and to many others who have been either convicted and they've done their time or whatever, had their careers ruined, or are still serving in Leavenworth or whatever prison for these same types of actions where they killed on a battlefield that has way too many lawyers on it and not enough trigger pullers. I hope it serves an inspiration for them that all hope isn't lost.
No, I'm glad that we transitioned to this because it's on our agenda. We talked about Ranger Hatley last week. We've talked about it several times. If producer Rob is still with us, if he could take 50 seconds to find the website for Ranger Hatley and throw it in the chat, that'd be awesome. But this case is good because of the word hope, like you said. But let's let's talk about the value of what we're talking about. Let's talk about how people throw the term war crime around. And we again, let's this is a cultural issue, because when we throw the word war crime around, we think about the Hague. We think about
Miley.
yes. We
Right.
think about Auschwitz. We think about these horrible things that happened. Srebrenica. We spoke of it earlier. We talk about war crimes, and then we throw in a young lieutenant in a leadership position looking out for the livelihood of his men, the safety and security of his men, killing an individual with limited evidence forensically, limited evidence anecdotally, limited evidence scientifically. And we put that guy not just into a prison, but we put him into the harshest federal prison environment we have. This is not club fed.
Yeah,
We're not talking about
it's not like
mowing
the
grass down at the Eglin Air Force Base golf course, Eagle or the Falcon. Pick your, poison tees or greens. We're talking about putting a guy into Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, with a sledgehammer, hitting big rocks into little rocks, and then hitting them again as little rocks enough times that they swell back up into medium-sized rocks. We're talking about hard labor. We're talking about diminished rations. We're talking about what people don't want to talk about a penal system being, over a lack of evidence, where over an overly judicious former administration trying to pander and cater to a demographic that has no business understanding the ways of war, because they've never been affected by what warfare is. And one man killing one person in a war zone is so fucking irrelevant to that the truth goes out the window. And we start throwing words around like war criminal. Like, this guy was not tried by the Hague. He was not tried, by the UN's High Commission for War Crimes. Like, let's put this in perspective.
There's a big difference between the guy that in Afghanistan that went off base and went and shot all those people in the middle of the night, right?
This is not Slobodan Milosevic,
right? Or the young guys from 520, which I know one of them. I knew him when he's a kid, out of Fort Lewis, that went and threw grenades and murdered innocent civilian Afghans. That is a crime.
That was my brigade.
Yeah.
The 3rd Brigade, 2nd Infantry Division, 520 regulars.
Yep.
I was in the Tomahawks, of course, a better battalion, just for the record.
More disciplined, maybe.
Yeah, 100%.
Like I say, I knew one of them that was the main culprit. I knew as a child. Him and his father and I served together. Right?
No, like that. We are not talking about that.
Right.
We are talking about an overly judicious administration going after people for anything that they thought that they could throw a book at, and putting a guy in prison for life. Like, Ranger Hatley's situation is just mind-blowing. If you've ever watched Law and Order, and then you look at the basic facts of the Hatley case, you're like, that can't possibly happen in America. There's no way. I've watched Law and Order. That's not how it works. That's what's gone down.
Yeah.
And Ranger Hatley has no hope.
I mean, maybe
because the previous administration took it all away. But this moment that happened last week hopefully will breathe a little bit of life, a little bit of hope back in to guys like Hatley. And there's more of that Leavenworth crew.
Yeah.
That's just one guy that got out. Like, originally there was the Leavenworth 11.
Right.
11 guys convicted of war crimes through this UCMJ program that you're like, that's not justice.
Right.
And that's not who we are as values. And now I saw on Twitter, people like pushing back against him, and they were like, "Hey, like the guy's a war criminal. I can't celebrate this victory." Like, yeah, he was convicted of a war crime, but you you haven't looked at the facts of the case.
Right. And
You know, like
anyone knows. Unlike the courts, unlike the U.S. court system, which is made up of a jury of your peers, which means pretty much like-minded from the area kind of folks, of all different demographics, all different incomes, but a sampling. A court martial in the military is made up of senior enlisted, very senior enlisted, or senior officer, flag level officers, um, that are not your peers if you're a junior enlisted guy. Hell, they're not your peers if you're a lieutenant or captain, right? So it's like a jury of your peers being if an 18-year-old came up on trial, having nothing but 45-year older people and older, right? Generations separated, different values and influences, always being on the jury for a 19-year-old or a 21-year-old or whatever. No, that's what UCMJ is like. You don't look up as a young.
it's not fierce.
No, it's guys that have probably been in your commander or are
Yeah.
buddies with your commander or your commander's commander. It's
Yeah.
that level, that
And
are
it's a
judging
small
it.
pool.
And it's a
It's a
small
very
pool,
small pool.
and let's just say call it like it. They're tainted. They've done 20 plus years over. I guarantee every one of them's done over 20 years in the military. They think they had it hard. They think you've been getting over it. They think you don't really know what it's like. There's all these prejudices and things that could be in their head, and I'm sure it's not in every single one of them, but there's a likelihood that it could be. There's no screening of them like there is in the civilian court system, where the attorneys from both sides get to question and say and try to understand
Mm.
what someone's values are and
No, you
beliefs.
you get a point. You get appointed. It doesn't. There's no selection. There's no like. I'd like to get him off of here.
Yeah,
No, it's like, hey, tomorrow, Colonel Jones, you got jury duty. Um, and if you could be there at 8:45, that'd be great.
yeah,
Yeah. Roger, let's go. What ship bag am I dealing with today?
right, yeah,
Like, because every commander's like, in their mind, the person that's gone as far as getting a court martial, obviously is a shit bag.
yeah. There's that whole premonition, right? There's no, they wouldn't be there
Yeah.
if it was. Yeah,
So like, there's no presumption of innocence. There's no like, and so and producer Rob, thank you so much for sharing. www.freejohnhatley.com. I thought it was Free Ranger Hatley, so I apologize, everyone, because I've said it a million times. Uh, I correct myself. The proper website is freejohnhatley.com. That's freejohn, Hatley, Hatley.com. And I encourage you to go find out about the case, find out about him, contact anyone you can. Right now, there's Eric. Oh man, I should know his name. The There is a Navy SEAL that's going through a similar process right now. He killed an ISIS soldier, and he's been in the brig. The president of the United States, the commander in chief, has got involved in the case to make sure that he's being treated appropriately and given the proper rights and freedoms up until the point of his trial that he deserves, because he was not getting that. And like we have to do the right thing for these guys. This Navy SEAL that's up on trial right now for killing this ISIS soldier, and let's be honest, he killed an ISIS soldier, so like we should be celebrating him.
yeah.
Uh, like just
Not
just
personing
saying,
him.
like if you're like, I don't think it's right that he killed this guy. Like, oh, you mean the guy that probably threw like gay dudes tied to other gay dudes off a roof? You mean the guy that engaged in the sexual trafficking of minor males and females? Like the guy that swore that he was going to destroy anyone that was a non-believer. Yeah, like, dude, you, yeah, you probably shouldn't be that angry at the guy. If you like the American way of life, you should be grateful that this dude exists.
Yep.
If you don't like the way that he killed that dude, like, get over it. You should have joined and done something about it yourself. And if you're an officer in charge of that dude, well, maybe if you spent more time on the front lines instead of hiding on a boat, uh, like, you'd feel differently too. So, yeah, ISIS soldier, you mean land pirate? Exactly. Like these, giving them like monikers like soldier, I'm giving them too much credit. So, Shard, you're right. You're absolutely right. Oh, hey, I see Chris Lavero joined. We're gonna pause for a quick second because, like, I just want to make sure Chris Lavero knows that, in my desk at all times, I have an emergency ration of the most deliciousness, and perhaps you've identified throughout the show that that's right. You know what that is? That's a Twizzler, my brother. You know why it's a Twizzler? Is because Twizzlers are soft, they're delicious, they're like a boar snake. You could clean your Glock with this and then eat it.
Afterwards.
Can you do it with a red vine? No. You know why? Because it's a hard, compressed sawdust of candy that sucks. And no, the red vines eater will not inherit the world because they're brittle, they're weak, and they don't have that soft candy outer shell.
Wow, there's some history there. I can see. That was a transition. All right.
No, and then we're back.
Okay.
So for those of you that don't know, it's true that I had a drop pouch that got issued to us late in the game. It was an RFI package, and we all thought the drop pouches were cute because we were trained as shooters when your magazine is empty to take it out, replace it, reload, and go. And we had this whole like process. Magazines that were full were downward in your kit. Magazines that were empty were upward, so that you could see that they didn't have rounds in them, so that in a firefight you could trade. You don't leave magazines on the battlefield. Like that's a punk move. Like that, you're not being a steward to the taxpayers.
And sadly, you didn't have a ramp. You had some ramps.
If I had ramps, if Gears for Grunts were around back in the day when we were getting after it, we'd have had that. So in my drop pouch, I carried two things. Chris Lavero was on the set of a movie. He's making a movie right now, a beautiful project, helping post-traumatic stress guys. A wonderful project coming out of the USC Film School right now. But, Chris Lavero told the story via Facebook Live or something like that the other day. Thousands of people have watched it, about how Sergeant Nunn would carry licorice in his drop pouch. And that's 100% true. Except that's not the only thing that I had in my drop pouch. I also had a Tickle Me Elmo. So when we came across kids, I had something that I could share with them, and kind of put them at ease, because a lot of times they're hitting these targets. There's children. They always hid behind, people, and I needed something. But I didn't, give them a lot of licorice because I was selfish and I wanted to maintain that for myself. But when we were like jettisoning things from our kits and stuff like that, one thing I'd never jettisoned was licorice. I always had an ample supply of licorice. I only believe in Twizzlers. I do not believe in red vines. And so, yes, in my drop pouch on my left hip, there was a Tickle Me Elmo and a Costco value pack of Twizzlers licorice at all times.
There you go.
Yes, and so he started the licorice war, and now, I just gotta, keep it real. We were trying to get Chris on the show tonight to talk about this movie, but in 2 weeks after they've wrapped, he's going to come back on, and we're going to talk about this movie because it's a beautiful piece. There's actually a really a nice piece in We Are the Mighty about the movie right now. Chris is being co-starred with a very famous female veteran named Jennifer Marshall, and congratulations for being a good leading man, Chris.
There we go. All right, so hopefully that kind of soothed things over with the licorice wars, but now
it's not over. It's not over.
It's not over. Never's over. Okay. Well, hey, we've been going long tonight, Toby, and we've covered a lot of topics. I know when we started, we were like, "What are we going to hit on?" And I was pretty kind of like, "I think we'll have no shortage." And I knew we wouldn't. because I set you up at the net just for you to spike it over. But anything else you want to we didn't cover that you just want to cover for our viewers and listeners tonight before we wrap up on this May 9th?
No, like I would love to just surmise, kind of what we were talking about this entire show, and it's like it's a reoccurring theme. I love the paradigm shift that's happening culturally in America. I love the fact that we're not divided like we used to be. I love how love is leading these conversations. I'm super proud of these kids in Colorado. I'm super proud of these kids in North Carolina. I like how the media is starting to pay attention to what's really happening in America versus like their agenda of what's happening in America.
Right.
And that's the beauty of people looking out for each other, people loving each other. And the only other thing that I want to comment on tonight is a Cubs fan, and this is in honor of Matt Burden. A Cubs fan has been banned from watching Cubs games in Wrigley Field because he did this next to.
Dude, you got me. You got me. You got me. Look.
I did. And that's the thing. Like, we've been playing this game for decades. And, like, for those that, did you just try and reach your finger up? Like, stick it in? Yeah, like, and that's like, this is not a white supremacist thing. This is
Where
like,
did that come
if you
from?
look at it, you deserve a punch. And like, that is not like a white supremacist thing. That is a joke, and it's a game that's been played. People in photographs have done it, for decades. That guy was not like saying white power to some like reporter.
That was a vet that was like, there's a camera on this dude. I'm going to slip this right in.
Yeah. Dude, you don't even have to be a vet. Like, I looked at pictures from my hockey league last season, and in the championship photo, there are like 3 dudes, 2 of which are of color, doing that. It's because it's like this long-standing game that's been happening, and I don't even know what the game's called, but it's like, if you get it in the hole, like, you're good to go. Like, you don't get punched. If you look at it, you get caught looking at it, you deserve to get clipped. Like,
it's like punch buggies.
Like Rob say, like, I played that when he was in middle school. Exactly.
Rob,
like,
what was that? What was that? Like 60 years ago, 70 years ago?
Oh no, dude, no, that was like, I think Rob was in school with like Moses, like that. I'm kidding. Like, he put that picture of him in Berlin the other day, and I was like, that's my dude right there. He's been around a minute, serving with them BDUs. You remember them BDUs?
Yeah, I remember them BDUs.
I remember both weights of them BDUs. But anyway,
yes.
Great night. Love you, Rob. Thank you for all your support as our unpaid producer that only gets beer and pizza sometimes when he hangs out with me. He needs to hang out with me more. He's one of my favorite people.
That's it. All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us. We're going about 1 hour and 15. It's time to wrap it up, give you guys your night back. We appreciate you letting us into your ears and on your screens. And cover some topics, and we'll see. As we talked about, we're always working guests. We're trying to line up. It takes a lot of time out of your night to listen in. It takes a lot of our guests to try to get things lined up. We talked about last week with Gina. We worked on getting her on for about 2 months, I think. But anyways, be sure and join us next Thursday, like every Thursday, 8:00 Eastern here on Stu and the Nunn. And stay in touch with us. Comment us on our Facebook. Share things with us. We'll keep putting stuff up. And Toby, I think we're ready to sign it off. Wouldn't you agree?
Always.
All right, there we go. Everybody have a good night, and we'll talk to all of you next week. If not before, because we know you. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Stu and the Nunn Radio. We hope you enjoyed your time with us because we have enjoyed sharing our time with you. Be sure to check out stewandthenunn.com in addition to asking us questions and interacting with us on our Facebook page and Twitter. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern here on Spreaker and Facebook Live. Also, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Warrior Media Solutions, BlueHammer.com, Veteran Outdoors, Graybeard Publishing, and Mighty Oaks Warrior Foundation. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Thank you again, and have a good night.